See if we can come in and get there.
Sure.
All right. We're good. All right, I'm going to call the Plan Commission of June 5th, 2023 to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Brunner,
Here.
Trustee Kettlebitter,
Here.
Commissioner Francois,
Here.
and Village President Langfeld.
Here. Stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Plan Commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes while the Plan Commission encourages input from residents that may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda. I don't see anybody here. Is there anybody on the internet?
No hands raised.
All righty. We'll go to general business. First one, approval of the minutes from the May 1st, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for May 1st, 2023.
I'll second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. So moved. Did you catch Kevin? Make a
Yep,
note
I
that
got it.
Kevin is
Yep.
all right. Yeah. All right, number 2, we'll take this as A and B regarding village driveway ordinance amendments. A, do I have a motion to go into public hearing?
So,
Second. I have a motion and a sec to go into public hearing on the village driveway ordinance. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. And is there anybody on internet that would like to speak at the public hearing?
No hands raised, no comments.
Okay. So no one with the public hearing. Do I have a hearing? How about a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close public hearing.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Public hearing closed. All right, we have discussion and possible action regarding the proposed zoning amendments pertaining to village driveways. Ben, do you want to just give a quick overview for everybody? And then we can go from there.
Sure, yeah. So what's detailed in your packet, the introduction kind of section is basically the overview of what we're aiming to accomplish here, and then the proposed zoning amendments are redlined, underlying text below in the specific sections of the code associated with the proposed amendment. Really the impetus for this came discussion between Sonia, Brian, myself, and others as a question was raised by a member of the public in relationship to expanding an existing driveway. And when we started digging into the ordinance, we found, as you can see, that there were several areas that either were ambiguous or somewhat contradictory to one another in how this was supposed to be approached. And so what we're really aiming to do is clean up that language to make it clear as to what the expectations are in relationship to a driveway expansion. And in particular, the figure that's on the screen right there was blatantly contradictory to what the text said in relationship to that driveway, that expansion area that's shown parallel to the street versus parallel to the driveway itself. And so we've created a new graphic to go in there, but basically outline the rules or the regulations in which that graphic would be applied to implement that type of situation and make that kind of the new rule moving forward. Obviously, an existing driveway and its existing state is going to be fine and is a non-conforming situation. But any new driveway expansion would be subject to, this new requirement, or I guess better, improved language related to the requirement. So what I did there mostly was, reflected instead of a number in some instances, just referencing the applicable zoning district, because there is a metric in the zoning district. We don't need to kind of repeat those in different areas in relationship to pavement setback, landscape surface area ratios, and front yard setbacks for driveways. And then the new locational requirement is that the driveway expansion be parallel to the driveway rather than having the kind of ambiguous language of whether it could be perpendicular or parallel to the driveway itself.
So, kind of sorry, is this pretty standard with like villages around us that you know of?
Yeah, I don't know of a lot of situations in which an incorporated municipality allows for that perpendicular situation to take place to the driveway. Most often you see it as a parallel extension or expansion of the driveway within the setbacks that are allowed within the lot. We don't obviously want it to go to the property line unless it's a shared driveway situation. So that's just kind of putting out there. You know, we have, as the village, impervious surface ratios over landscape surface area ratios, and so we want to make sure that's clear that if you want to do this, you still need to meet that, and we don't want you to be exceeding those impervious surface standards, so.
Any other question? Oh, okay, I have Seth and then Kevin and then Judy.
Do we have any situations where we have like rear yard driveways, garages that this would impact? Like a driveway that goes past someone's house and comes around the back, and now their parking is behind the house and parallel to the street instead of, you know what I mean? This is like your typical.
But I think this states it's between the house and the street,
This
so
is
that wouldn't apply.
expansions in the front
Only in
yard,
the
which
front.
is between the structure and the.
I don't know if we have similar stuff for other types of driveways that.
If it was like, if the garage was detached in the rear yard and the driveway went back there, they would still have to meet the setback standards relationship to the rear yard line and the side lot line. But I don't believe off the top of my head that I don't think we have a requirement that would say perpendicular or parallel.
Yeah, it's fine, it's okay, it's the aesthetic side is.
Actually, the same question.
Okay, Judy?
I was gonna make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Go ahead then, make the motion.
I make the motion to approve the proposed zoning ordinance amendments to the driveway. See a number, section, you got me to say section 8412.
That's fine. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. All right, number 3, discussion village short-term rental properties. Ben, you want to just summarize this one too? You know, it's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this a little bit at the last meeting, and you had asked me to come back with some materials. Left the draft ordinance model that was in there unchanged, but basically pulled some specifics related to what the statutes say for short-term rentals, a little bit about kind of a summary of what is proposed within the ordinance itself, and then a little bit of a comparison of kind of how the city of Madison handled these slightly different than what that model would. And so what we would be looking for today is some direction on those policy decisions, which would be on the second page. In relationship to some of the stuff we talked about last meeting, which I think I have a pretty good idea of, but I think we should just at least, you know, say one way or the other on. And then, and or if there is anything else that you guys viewed as a critical component that needed to be in this ordinance when it would come back to you guys for formal action.
People's thoughts? Seth?
I don't remember what I said last time, but my only concern thing I was thinking about was the 1 day minimum, you know, especially for someone that's not it's not their principal residence, or they're not on site, it's like, are we gonna open up to people that don't live here owning party houses and renting them out for a night at a time?
Don't, that's exactly what happened in Madison. That's why you see the how Madison was much more restrictive, because that was our problem in Madison. We had nice neighborhoods. Someone was leasing their home for, Taste of Madison or football games, and they were parties, and the neighborhoods were trashed with beer, beer glasses and loud noises and stuff like that. So that's why Madison became very strict on the guidelines, because we ran into problems and there was really not a whole lot we could do.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I have this concern, I'm not comfortable with the 1 day minimum, or one night. I think that this is not that type of community, and it concerns me from a party, drug use, prostitution, what have you. I don't like that idea. I think in some municipalities it's a 2-night overnight or something, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of variability in how communities handle it. I think that there is a certain balance to because maybe there isn't an issue right now and the issue presents itself later on. And we can only be proactive enough at this point to say, all right, we want to curb this, or we want to regulate it this way, and need some testing grounds in each environment, in each municipality, because like you mentioned, Madison, completely different animal than Cross Plains. So that is certainly something we could do, is a 2-night instead of a 1 night. It's just kind of the balance between promotion of tourism, or some people who might want to make an extra income on the side kind of deal, versus a potential conflict that hasn't yet occurred, and trying to curb that before anything like that comes about. So we certainly could do that 2-night if that's the route you want to go. The 1 night allows for a little bit more.
Related to that, I have less of a concern if it's the owner's residence, because then I'm thinking they've got more skin in the game and they're less likely to rent their house out for those purposes if that's actually their principal residence that they're living in most of the time. And so the way that they have it in Madison, it's rare for me to praise Madison, but I kind of like how that is, where there are some differences between if it's a primary residence and not. So I think that by itself would limit some of the concern. So I don't have as much of a concern with a 1-night rental if it's their primary residence, but if we don't want to go that way and get into all sorts of,
Very
different
long.
flow chart, yeah, then I can understand that too.
Judy?
I don't have a problem with the 1 night, only for the fact that I think we're not Madison, we don't have the Taste of Madison. I think people are gonna use it for fishing. I have a lot of people that say they wanna fish up here and they live in Illinois and they don't Rockford and they don't wanna drive home that night or whatever else. Or grandbabies, party and they want, birthday party or something like that, grandparents want to stop, for 1 night, don't want to stay 2 nights. I just don't feel like it's gonna be a huge party thing up here. I feel like it's gonna be used more for those kind of things. Maybe a wedding overnight that they needed to stay because they're out of town guests or something, but I don't know, I don't have.
And I guess to put it in perspective, it's not like there's been a lot of rental
Right,
or Airbnbs and Cross Plains. I mean, that's the other thing you gotta take into consideration. This has not at this time been a hot thing for people to do. But like I say, it's much better to get something on the books than to have a problem and then try to fix it. So I like I say, I have no problem going light now just to get something on the books. And then if we have to harden it, we can. But like I say, I can see a lot of reasons why people would want to stay just 1 night. And I can understand why people would want to rent a room just 1 night.
I think it's a lot easier to make something looser than it is to tighten something, if there's already a problem. I mean, what would be the harm in doing 2-night minimum for a year, and if that goes well, then go down to 1, versus how hard it is to change something in the other direction. If people I guess just as far as like the execution of change, if it was needed.
Yeah, I just don't think we're gonna get the data in a year, because no one, I mean, we don't have anybody doing it now, this was just something to get prepared for it. But certainly, I agree with you, it's easier to go loose than it is to get tighter, maybe, depending on what it is, this I'm not so sure. I don't think we'll be pounded with lots of people saying, if we had one day going to two, that's gonna throw their livelihood off or anything like that, so. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with everything said, both sides of the one night issue. We have people that want to use it for the trail, I say trail all the time, they're looking for places to rent in this game, Middleton or ask friends or whatever it might be. For one night, long distance hiking or something, but I can see them also, if they're required to do two, renting it for two and staying for one, I mean, that happens. So, I think it should be up to the owner of the house, and if we have a licensing process. And they're coming to us and saying, I keep getting one night requests, then I think we can address that issue. But for now, I think we could leave it at 2 nights until we get pushed back for a single night. So we have a licensing process, and I would imagine that if there's an ordinance in place, there's a variance in place, there could happen. And so if somebody is coming to look for us for requests, one night all the time, I'm sure we could make a variance to this ordinance or change the ordinance if we had to.
Yeah, we can change the ordinance, that's what you do, I don't think we do a variance on it. That would be very, I think, kind of dangerous to go, but. Yeah, like I say, I just think it's important to have something on the books.
And we do have requests for people to stay open.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, there's just no one, there's just not many people in Cross Plains that want to do an Airbnb.
Yeah, there are 0 rooms to rent.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
All of this. Have we heard of anyone on the sellers end that is, seem like it's mostly people that would. Sellers end, rent, people renting, that it's people that are, it's the residences that they want to rent out. Or that most people are looking, that's what they're expecting is like, hey, if I want to come in and rent a room, is it from someone who's just. That's their primary residence, they're just not using it at that time? Or are we expecting like houses that are gonna be just rental houses, basically?
It could be both. It could be someone who's going on a 2-week vacation and they put their place on and someone rents it for a week.
No, that's less concerned, I'm concerned more about the non-resident owning a property that's just used as a.
Oh.
Two different places.
Like they're leaving and they, instead of selling their house, they're just gonna go.
Or somebody they buy a house just to rent it out.
Spec buyers coming in.
Yeah,
On the market.
You'd be better just to rent it for, get a year lease on it here in Cross Plains versus trying to do 2 days at a time. I don't think you'd make your mortgage payment on that, Doug.
The question I guess I have a little bit on, I've taken advantage of the VRBOs and Airbnbs in Chicago before, but the UP is page, let's see, page 10, paragraph 5, the kind of strict parking requirements, they have to be in the off the street. And I was more curious, so we don't have people kayaking, hiking, coming here. You know, I get requests every year when I do spike rep for where can I stay at, so I'm all over Middleton, trying to get a room rate. But you know, I do think it's much stricter than a residence, obviously, and I don't know that that's a problem. But also, is it enforceable, like when we fill out as a VRBO, are we gonna have police drive by and check, see if there's a car parked on the street? I know when we were in Florida, we probably had 6 or 8 visitors to those spring breaks, so you know, we did have only cars parked on the street. And we called the extra restrictions, so I told them we went for it's fairly strict for parking, so I would say, and we do have, and like you look at that new venue next to 1909, if they want to make it a venue. If they, you know, get people to stay there for a fun weekend here in town or.
I don't see where it's restricting that. What it says is when you rent it, you have to have 2 spots. And then people, says all guest parking for vehicles and trailers shall be within the legal, off-street parking spot,
Street parking for guests is not permitted, no parking is, street parking for guests is not permitted, I guess was number 3 was.
oh, I see.
Would that be overnight, that's specified as overnight parking?
I think it's totally unenforced.
I agree with
I
you.
It's
thought-
gonna be a complaint-based situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having the person have space for 2 people, 2 cars is one we can enforce, right? When they license, you have 2 spots for people off street,
I mean,
and then you don't allow them on gravel, the lawn, or planter beds, that's all for everybody.
I'm pretty good with number 3, I mean, everything except number 3. That-
Yeah,
If
yeah.
somebody comes to visit, and quite honestly, if it's a bigger house and they have a smaller driveway.
Well, first of all, I don't think we can say who can park on a public street. We can say how long you can park on it, but you can't tell someone because you're a guest, you can't use the public street. Yeah, that is,
Maybe just strike number 3.
yeah, I think that would be, yeah.
When they register or go through the licensing process, Ben, are you aware, they would have to still show where those designated spots are gonna be within the property, correct? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
are we just assuming 2 spots, like a driveway, and that's designated?
Right,
Yeah.
it's most likely gonna be a driveway situation,
Mhm.
and that's why it's written the way it is, and. In all reality, what you would do when they apply to the license is, have an air photo of the property and say, all right, they have a line of driveway to facilitate this situation. We wouldn't be looking for like. Full site plan.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's, the goal is to limit the neighborhood impact related to this, and that's where these types of rules, originated from, is, in a lot of communities, you don't want your street to be completely, parked up with people renting the Airbnbs, maybe you do, but in some communities they don't, so that's kind of where this divided from.
Would we also need to adjust or delete number 2 out of that? Because I read that as very similar to number 3. It's basically saying all guest parking should be off street. Street parking is not permitted. Unless I'm interpreting number 2 wrong. 5A2.
I guess I read it as it's just saying what kind of, for the parking spots that have to be off street, what it has to be. That's kind of odd. I'm reading that if they have a trailer, the trailer's gotta fit on the field.
I just read it that all shall be within off street parking. Yeah,
But it's saying all guests parking, and I think you look at one above, it's the minimum of off-street parking has to be.
Well, we're saying minimum is fine, but number 2, I read as all guest parking shall be within a legal off-street parking space.
Okay.
So
You could combine 1 and 2 in the same.
Yeah, that's kind of.
that makes more sense, yes. You must provide off-street parking and,
They have to use it, yeah.
well, they don't have to, use it. We're saying they can park on the street.
Well, yeah.
We say, well, what are our street parking rules here, like November to April?
There's no.
No, we only have snow emergencies.
No emergency parking, really.
Yeah, and then there's always the abandoned vehicles that they'll mark and then you have 48 hours to move it or it gets towed. There's that.
There's marijuana campers and truck equipment. and stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's some limitation on that too. That we have. I can't quote it to you, but
There is some.
yeah, I know there is. That has come up before.
Definitely, whatever, so on.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else? I guess so are people pretty supportive of the draft, short term? The draft one that's here besides the modifications versus going to the Madison model?
Does it, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what page we're on, but does it indicate with the, proven identity of the renter? I think it is in the, I just want to make sure that the renter, the person that's renting it is either on site or over the age of whatever.
I know there was
The
some-
person applying for the license is the operator of the Airbnb, so everything's under their name. They most likely are the property owner in most situations.
There's something like they have to show proof of who's renting it.
They have to keep a record of like names and addresses.
Right, they gotta do, just like a hotel and a motel.
But we don't care if they're under 18. You probably look at it, but the owners.
Right.
We don't do.
Well,
You never-
is that something in the licensing that?
Well, no, because the license is going to the person who's own it,
Yeah,
you know, at the property. Their job is when they rent it, they need to follow of logging in people and stuff, but I would think they would want to get an ID and they wouldn't do people under 18 because that's a whole different law when it comes to trying to recover damages and stuff.
And if they go through like an Airbnb and all that stuff, they have their own right, they were in contact with.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you have to be an adult.
You have to get an operator license no matter what from the state, which
Mhm.
there may be.
That's true.
Requirement to get that too, I'm less familiar with that aspect, but in order to operate it, you have to have state sign off.
but I guess, yeah, maybe this one never, so like. But like, so I could be owning my house and renting it out, and like Judy could come rent it. And sign an agreement, but then she could turn the keys over to her like her 15-year-old son and be like, oh, have fun, you know, that's what I'm saying, is like.
Yeah, we can't stop that.
In theory,
We would say, there's nothing in the licensing that, like, verbiage that would say you can.
Well, I'm sure the person who rented to Judy's made her a child.
That's
Yeah,
not-
yeah.
Yeah, I like the draft, the short term draft.
Okay.
I don't, just that one part.
Yeah,
Or
we can-
combine one and two like accessible, I think it'd be fine, I don't think three should be.
All right. Well, we'll bring that then to the board, right? And see what the board says, and then we'll bring it to legal and get something on the books then.
Is everyone comfortable with the 180 days consecutive, like, that's maximum?
So they.
That's 80 days in a year.
Well, that's where I was confused.
180 days, which must be consecutive, that's,
Mhm.
so it's only basically 6 months. I don't know if that has to be the same each year, like they define it on their license, like it's from April 1st to.
Oh, for the license period,
Yeah,
not for the stay.
right, for the license period, so it's only, basically, we're only allowing 6-month window.
and that's again,
Encouragement.
an attempt to curb. People coming in and saying, well, I can rent out my house all you want.
That's one of the things I'd like to.
Yeah.
See if people are comfortable with it.
So we're gonna modify the parking thing and then go to 2-night stay. Right? Is that what everybody? Isn't that what everybody was suggesting, or did I read it wrong?
No, agreed. What I heard.
Yep, all right.
And we could get feedback from some people who rent when we go to that, or they're missing out on some stuff for them. And talk a little bit, it'd be good to get feedback from people who are doing it.
Yeah, right now, I don't have anybody. So, well, yeah, okay, well, why don't we do that, and then we'll bring that to the board, and people have an opportunity, then when it comes to ordinance, we'll have a public hearing and we'll do that again, all right.
And then I guess before we moved on, the whole hotel rental room tax.
We're finances committee.
Right,
gonna deal
that's-
with that.
Totally.
We talked a little bit about it at the plan commission,
Right.
that's outside of the zoning ordinance, so it's not on your plate, but that is in the works to be combined with this.
Yeah, yeah, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, we'll go to discussion of village banner policy. You saw in there that, 12 days hung the signs on the village sign. So we have two options. There's the zoning sign ordinance under temporary signs that have some rules governing special events as one of the sections. And then we have a policy on the banners, even though we haven't used them, that would go across the highway. So the question is, which one of those best fits what we want to do with the signs? So when I looked at the temporary one, there's no permission that's needed on that, which I think we do, plus it's a ordinance. The policy, to me, what I would do is take the elements of the ordinance, put it into the policy, add the other stuff, or use the same logic that we use with the banners and just go with policy, so it's easy to change, because you go into the zoning again, where it just takes so long to make changes, and we'd almost have to add a whole new section just for village signs, and I just don't know why we wouldn't just look it into the banner one. So those are kind of the two options.
I think I understand you, and I totally agree. I thought it was just modify the banner policy instead of just relating to overhead banners and these.
Yeah,
That's really all we have to do.
yeah, I think it's important that our policy mirrors the zoning for special event sign. You know, it has a square footage and it has certain things that you can't have on it. So I think we still want to incorporate it, because we don't want the village to have different rules than our citizens to follow.
Is the overhead banners sign?
No, I'm talking about the sign ordinance. We have an ordinance that's temporary sign, and then it's broken up to special events signage, and it goes through where you can have one on private property somewhere else and one on your business, right? So, but you can only have two, you know, for that. What I'm saying is that ordinance doesn't really talk about getting permission from the village to use village sign, right? Because that's for private. So what I'm saying is, I agree it needs to go in the banner, but I would incorporate what is also in our zoning into the policy. So there's not conflict.
And it should be specific for just these two signs.
Right.
Just-
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's personally good use of that spot.
Yeah, no, I'm not, yeah,
Yeah, and I think it should go right into that policy and be
And require approvals.
yeah, it would,
Correct.
that's what I'm saying, we would kind of follow the banner process.
Yeah.
But the rules for, and I think the board didn't want to do obviously the charging. I mean, if you look, there's a scale of charging for the banner, which is totally different because of the permissions and the work that's involved in a banner versus the signs. So and policy is always easier to change.
Yeah, knowing a little bit about like the time limits for displaying the banner would be beneficial too, so we know, especially for taking down, putting up, if there's conflicting events and there's signs up, and you know, both want to have access to it. I think we just hope to have a little bit of a timetable in which they can display. This I switched over to the overhead banner.
Oh, okay, because, and
Policy.
see, that's the difference. The temporary special events and ordinances, you can have them up 30 days before, but you have to have them removed within 5 days after. And I think that's a little different than the banner one.
Yeah, this one has display periods at number 5 here as far as when they can be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when they can be up, and
Yeah, so we just need to have a separate paragraph that deals with village sign. The two village signs.
I agree.
Yeah,
I would just add that, in the banner, when we talk about the banner and the two monuments, there's also the space around it. And I don't know if that's affected by any of this policy. It's not, because it's not affected by the temporary
sign.
Technically, those are not allowed, we just
Yeah.
look the other way, but now what we're hoping is they'll go away from the two posts and put them onto the regular sign, and we'll have a licensing of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, technically, they don't follow within our policy or our ordinances.
Okay.
But that's what we're trying to fix.
The last time this got brought up, we heard from somebody, some ginseng about the fees for the banners.
Yes, Kelly Andrews, I think, yeah.
So how do we do it? Is that where we talk about that now? And
No, I think that needs to be done by the board. We're here looking at just the two sign things, because we didn't put that on the agenda. It was just for the sign. And it's really, if you remember at the board meeting, Michael was suggesting the temporary sign should be covered it. Other people thought it should be under the banner, but looking at the temporary special, you see what I'm saying? That's all we're really talking about. We can talk about the cost and everything later on. And again, it's one of those things that no one has done yet, you know, we really don't have too much data on it.
Does the policy, the one that you pulled up for, does that have fees in it?
Yeah, for the banner.
Right.
for the banner, but not for the other one.
And that's because it takes village staff to get them up there, plus permission from DOT.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, that I was wondering which question was, I thought it was in here, again, like, in my mind, it's just modify a couple words in here and.
I think we should separate it.
I do too,
We gotta separate it from banner to signs for sure.
because then those.
These are banners.
Those are super specific signs.
But where they're placed, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about.
Over Main Street versus on.
Of the village sign, that's what we're talking
Yeah, I know.
about. Oh,
I'm just saying, what, in my mind, it's simplest to treat putting a banner on that as pretty much the same as this.
No, not even close. But because the banner's going across the US highway.
Yeah, this is on the side of the US highway. It's like,
Yeah, I
the only
know.
thing you probably don't really need is the $1 million policy because something's not gonna hit it that it's hanging down to.
Well, anybody can put their sign, we can give them permission, they can put their signs on the regular sign. No one can put their signs across the highway except for our public works.
Why do we want, if it's our entry sign, why do we want other people putting their signs on it anyway?
Well, the argument was because they're community events and that's part of,
Tourism.
yeah, and the argument is. We're already allowing them to put them on stakes right next to our sign, you know how they fold in and bend. So here, all we're doing is moving it to the sign.
And we have the overpriced signs with the giant empty concrete slab.
Right.
Which
So that was the reasoning behind it. But we need to have control of that.
That's what I'm thinking that's why I'm asking the question, because in my mind, it gives us more control if we basically make those entry signs. If you want to put a banner on the entry sign, it's basically following this same policy, we just amend
But
it.
that's in conflict with the special events signage in our ordinance. That's what I'm trying to say. So we have to separate it.
Can you get a sign with no special event?
The ordinance, okay, the ordinance is under temporary signs. And then it has, under that, it has special events. And in there, there's requirements that can't be more than 32 square feet. I can tell you a banner across Highway 14 is gonna be more than 32 square feet. So that's why we left it as a separate, the banner is clearly separate than, yeah, there you go, public
Public
event.
event sign.
There you go, that's what it has right now in our ordinance.
I mean, to me, with those two spots on Highway 14, they get a lot of visibility and a lot of traffic. It's a very bare, ugly
Yeah,
spot of slide. I think we can clearly have the size that looks the best and have them be consistent when they do change them in and out. The other thing is that they can reuse the sign,
right.
hopefully. And there's a few things, I don't know, something going on, and they're just good.
Banner policy.
But just hold that for a sec. So if you looked at this, we would have to modify this to make it applicable to our signs. Right? We'd have to modify it. And we'd actually have to add probably a 6 or, move 7 down and add 1 for public event signs on village signs. And it just makes more sense to hook it to the policy. This is good the way it is for working on the non-village signs.
But so if you go back to the one.
Sorry. Mhm.
So public signage, public event sign, what about public sign that's not related to an event, like congratulations, Park Elementary graduates.
Well, see,
Something
that's
where it's not related to an event.
right, and that's why it should be defined in the policy.
Yeah, no, I agree, I'm just.
So that's why I don't think it belongs here. I think we should leave this ordinance as is. And then,
That's what I was trying to say.
right, but the difference is you're saying to just hook it in and copy the banner. I think you have a separate, under that policy, there's now called village entry signs. And then you come up with the rules to that is different than the banner, because there are different.
Well, that's what I was supposed to pull up the banner, because I'm curious to see what the big differences would be between these signs and the overhead one.
Well, one is
I
the date, how long, and you keep it up and take it down.
Yeah, what
And the permission
want,
from was DOT, the expense.
what do we want to make different about either of those?
Well, I'm certainly not gonna ask DOT permission. Why would we wanna add that red tape? I mean, what, there are signs, we can do what we want. We're not going across the US highway, so,
They're not in the DOT right away, are they?
no. Well, they probably could be, I don't know if our signs are.
That's why I'm asking is, are our entry signs in there right away? They need permission to put pretty much anything.
Well, how long is the public's right there from somewhere? They're quite a ways off.
Could be 100 feet,
I don't guess so.
Yeah,
50 feet from the center.
DOT allowed us to put the signs there,
Yeah,
so,
so concrete monument there, I think
Yeah.
I don't mind if we put a little sign on it.
yeah,
I think that's,
yeah, I don't, that's,
no, I do not want to get DOT or US
No.
highways involved.
no.
But like,
Along the
even,
way.
look, even when there's not, because it's so hideous and looks so dumb to have this slab of concrete. What if when there's not events, we could just have things like, welcome to an Ice Age community or something, just.
We could do that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It might be good to eventually have like a standard sign and like have it get changed, so I think it was supposed to say gateway to the Drexel.
Yeah, it was with grass and the hills and stuff, but it was $80,000 a piece.
Whip up some sort of.
Well, anyway,
I'll apply for it.
But just, it'd be nice, this looks nice, this trout based one,
oh, yeah,
it'd be nice,
We're not gonna take costs, right? I just have no idea.
and you can read.
that was probably $100, 150.
Maybe we'd have some seasonal ones or something that we as a village could use.
And it's nice
No
that
offense.
they're mounted instead of on stake. So I think, so the big question is where it falls, and I think I'm hearing that most people agree it should go to under the banner one. Under the policy instead of trying to rewrite ordinance.
That'd be my opinion.
I would add just that the key difference to align with your point is that the banner over the right of way itself is not regulated by zoning. Zoning only is property outside of the right of way.
Oh,
So the policy for the banner is needed, and it's distinctly different than the sign code in that respect.
very good.
When we're talking about off of, outside of the right of way, I mean, public or private property, then that's when the sign code is.
Okay, good point then. All right,
So. We'll
I-
put
yeah,
together a
well,
Policy.
yeah, why don't we hook it on there on the policy, and if you want, I can write something up to at least start with. I can bring it back. If people are okay with that. I don't, like I say, it's gonna be copying a lot of what's already, I don't think I'm gonna be inventing anything. Putting it in different spots. All right, anything else on that? All right, do I have motion to adjourn.
So.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. The meeting is over. Thank you.
No, I have that.
Memory exceeds in fall.
Very console. A lot more things on here.